Hi, everybody. This is Fred, stage manager at Harmonic Software Production Studio, and we are here at 5950 Dallas Parkway Conference Center at the Tollway Towers. And you're not, but we're happy to have you here. Today, we've got a great presentation coming up. Taylor and Jeremy Bante sitting over there is going to be giving us some good information that we want to hear. So, but first, we've got a sponsors moment.
Okay, thank you all for that technical moment on how to set up Keynote. My name is Steve Sikora, president of Harmonic Data Associates. Whether you are joining us virtually or in person, I'm glad you've chosen to spend some time with us this sunny June morning. We had a good event last month. We've done a little art to commemorate tips, tricks, and trials. I want to call out that our example files are now available on Harmonic's Learning Lab at the URL there. Eric Clark showed us some export techniques for custom field names, and Heather McHugh showed us a scripting technique for error trapping and streamlining of scripts. After our presentations, we had some delicious burgers. This month, we've got, as Fred mentioned, Jeremy Bante and Taylor Sharpe. Lynette took Jeremy's title and had some fun with it, the out of control modularity. Taylor's going to be walking us through some sales tax reporting API info, and we'll be wrapping the day with fajitas. So we have these monthly meetings, first Friday of every month, in person and virtually, right? And we're working on making the virtual experience as good as it can be. There are some changes that you'll hopefully notice this week where you don't have to be allowed into the meeting. You're automatically accepted into the meeting. We're trying a new camera and speaker setup to keep the echoes down, but also make sure that we can hear and hopefully you can hear. And we're managing the outbound screen sharing. As you're seeing here, I didn't do that, Fred did that. So we're managing the outbound screen sharing so you have a more detailed visual experience, right? Our goal is we're trying to get the best compromise of in-person, virtual, and recording for the recorded artifact, where we will edit out the Keynote technical opportunity that we had there. But I got to say, in-person is always going to taste better. So if you are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and you can afford a trip to Addison, just north of downtown on the Dallas North Tollway, you're always welcome in person. We have a sizable multi-tenant conference center here in the building, and there's ample free parking, plenty of space. Please join us. Next, we want to hear from you. We'd love to do a session where we put it in the RSVP, and I just want to talk about it for a second. We'd really like to do a session where we talk about a problem or a solution, right? Where we can get together as a community and just noodle on it. And I know that, so all of us as developers, sometimes we're reticent to maybe bring a technical problem to the table because makes us look dumb because why don't we have that problem? And maybe that's not what I'm talking about, right? Maybe post that on a Claris community, but there's a lot of opportunity in that kind of intersection of humanity and technology to just chat about an approach or an issue or again, a solution. We'd love to hear from that. So if you have something like that, bring it to our attention for next month. And speaking of next month, FileMaker 2024 was just released, right? And of course, the headlining feature with FileMaker 2024 is all about AI. There's all kinds of first-party integration hooks and things. And we are definitely going to dig into that and talk about that. But FileMaker 2024 has a whole bunch of features and additions and improvements that go well beyond AI and that are really relevant, especially to us developers. So what we would like to do is to encourage you to tell us about those things. Read those release notes, find your favorite feature, and then spend 5 or 10 minutes next month surfacing for us, what is that feature? Why should we care? Why should we use it? I know for me, I'll sometimes be like 2-3 years after release, I'm like, what did you just do? You mean it does that? How long has it done that, right? And sometimes it's a lot of those small things that get released, but they can have a big impact, on our workflow or on our ability to do something. So we'd like to take next month's FMPUG to be kind of a group event where we all surface those cool new things that aren't AI in FileMaker 2024 that are the reason why we should be upgrading and encouraging our customers to stay current with that software. I want to bring to your attention Claris Community Live. The second event happened just recently. I had the opportunity to watch it live. It's available now on the Claris community for replay and with the materials downloaded. It was really well done. Chris Hippolyte gave the presentation and worked with Rosemary in real time to present this event. He provided some materials that you can download and go through with him, and a lot of kind of real world experience. So highly recommended if you're interested in the concept and area of AI prompting. There's a lot of stuff there. I'm going to watch it again just to unpack some of what was there. So highly recommended. And then following on that, next week, actually, next Thursday, Wim DeCourt is going to be giving the third session along with Rosemary about why it pays to keep up to date. There's been some chatter and concern in the community lately about a security compromise that was found with older versions of FileMaker. And that compromise has been addressed in the latest releases of 19 and 2023. And I know it was a reminder to us at Harmonic that we need to keep our customers up to date. We spent a couple busy days doing that as things started to kind of heat up out there on this topic. But it's a good reminder, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the esteemed Wim DeCourt has to say on the topic, and I'm sure it will be a rich conversation. So again, recommended. It's next Thursday, the 13th. That information is also available on the Claris community site. Lastly, I just want to say congratulations to my team. We're often so busy that doing the next thing that we forgot to remember that we finished the last thing, right? We finished a major project this last month for one of our clients, Independent Support Services. So I want to say congratulations to my team. It was definitely a team effort. And with that, looking forward to the presentations today. Thanks for joining us and being here. And let's have a great meeting.
Okay, everybody, welcome to FMPUG Dallas. I'm Taylor Sharpe, one of the chapter co-coordinators, along with Fred Craven is one of them, and Greg Price is the other one. So the three of us are the coordinators that try to make this happen regularly every month, and we're glad to have everybody here and participating. So as far as announcements, I think today is the last day you can get early registration for Pause on Air. So if you want to do Pause on Air, I just bought mine. I'm going next fall, so it should be good. The other thing is, if you don't get on the early end of things, the hotel rooms aren't available and you have to stay out in a cabin or pitch a tent. And I'm not going to do that. So anyway, okay. So that's the Pause on Air announcement. The obviously Steve already told us a little bit about FileMaker 2024. I'm doing some digging, and I'll tell you a couple of things I'm looking at big on it that are excitement to me. Now it's here, and I will be doing a bunch of testing so I can report on it next month. First of all, one of the suggestions I've had for years and years was to make the SSL certificates easier and free and use the Let's Encrypt technology. That is here. I'm already a little disappointed at how they integrated it, but it's here, and then maybe it can improve from where we're at. But the nice thing about it is you can automatically have SSL certificates automatically installed with an external service that'll keep up for it, and it also doesn't have any additional cost to go out to GoDaddy or whoever your domain provider is to have to buy them. So that's kind of nice. So anyway, I see a whole bunch more of that coming. And the last one, I know everybody talks about AI, but there's little weird things that I see in 2024 that I'm excited about. For example, a lot of times now we're in a layout and we want to do something somewhere else in another context. So we'll do a perform script on server, or maybe we'll have a plugin so we can do an execute SQL so we don't have to change things. But one of the neat things is there's a new script now to execute the data API in FileMaker that will then go do that without having to change context. And you can kind of do that now instead of doing the old perform script on server, which of course is great until then you're working on a system that's not on a server or whatever, fun things. So there's a whole lot to explore this next month. I'm sure we'll be inundated by a whole lot of interesting things, and I look forward to further discussing those next month. Take it to heart what Steve said. Try those things out and come back and report next month. Let's see what everybody is doing with them, having good success or failures or whatever, or workarounds, or how it is. So, okay, let's get going. Today, my presentation is about sales tax. We're going to have a little bit of a creative work through on it because the account I've been using that I was going to demo on, the company I'm working with thinks they paid it, and yet Avalara says they didn't, so we got cut off this morning. So this is going to be a little bit more talking than showing, but dealing with accounting, there's so much. As the software guy, all I can do is do the credentials work, and if they don't, there's not much I can do about it. But the reason why I want to talk about this is a lot of us deal with small to mid-sized businesses, and of course, the big Amazons and all those Costco's and the big retailers and stuff, they've got, these massive staffs to take care of sales and use tax, and that's what it's called in Texas. It's just called sales tax in a lot of other places. But I want to talk about how it impacts a lot of our customers that are small to mid-sized businesses, and how we've gotten to where we are at right now. So I'm going to talk outside of the FileMaker realm, and part of this is the reality that while a lot of people hire me as a FileMaker developer, sometimes almost half of what I'm doing is really more business consulting. I'm helping people figure out how to improve their business's processes that are about making decisions before we get down into development work. Do we really want Fred doing it this way, or could we do it in a way that Fred works a lot less, or whatever? So anyway, but one of those problems that frequently come along are tax issues, and state taxes is one thing. There's all types of other taxes too, but I'm not going to touch base on any of those. Turn my phone off. Okay, so what happened in 1992 in the realm of sales tax? Anybody? Does that ring a bell to anybody? Okay, this is where a lot of common knowledge came about in a North Dakota case that basically said, hey, if you're in Texas and I'm selling to Steve in North Dakota in this case here, if I'm the business here, and even though you're up there, if I as a business do not have a presence in North Dakota, then I don't have to collect sales tax for North Dakota. So basically it became if you don't have presence in a state, you do not have to collect sales tax in those states. And that had been the law of the land since 1992. And it was the excuse for people always trying to do these, selling, out of state, so you skipped all the sales tax stuff. So that was, good little get around for that. But obviously, the states didn't like that, and I guess you could have figured that would have eventually become a problem. In 2018, anybody heard of Wayfair? They're biggie. Anyway, they got in a wrangle with South Dakota, and so the North Dakota case was Quill versus North Dakota. And then the next case, and then a bunch of the states wanted to, you'll hear the kill Quill going around where they're trying to get rid of that so that states can collect from people selling from other states, so the kill Quill got challenged in 2017-18. I think the final ruling was 2018. That went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. And so one of the questions always is, the Supreme Court's never supposed to change their precedents, but sometimes they clarify it in ways that totally reverse it. But anyway, so things got reclarified that basically said in the world of the internet that didn't exist in 1992, at least to the general public, we now have the ability to have presence in other states. And because of that ruling in 1992 that said if you didn't have presence doesn't really apply because we could all easily access these things on the internet. So thanks to the internet, Supreme Court has said, okay, that means if you're selling to people in other states, you have to collect sales tax for those states based on what those states' laws on it are if you have to collect sales tax. So if you just sell, a $1 item to Oklahoma, you're not going to have to file a sales tax there unless the state of Oklahoma says you have to file it. So guess what? All of these states now have different criteria on when you have to start collecting sales tax for them. Some of them are based on the number of invoices you've issued. Some of them are based on the amount of money. I think like California is like $200,000 of invoicing. 500. Or something, and a number of invoices. So thanks to the inconsistency of state legislatures, these rules are kind of all over the place. And so the silly thing that comes, we talked about, I'm supposedly a FileMaker developer, but people come to me for business advice, and they ask me for business advice on things that I have no reason to be giving business advice on. I'm not a CPA, I'm not a tax expert, I'm whatever, but sometimes the developer who just makes things happen somehow ends up being the expert because he's the only one that can make it happen. But we have tools to solve this. And of course, the neat thing about FileMaker is, of course, we've had APIs and the ability to use JSON and these tools really since about 2016, which is right about when that case was coming around. So we have new tools to help solve these problems for our clients. And the biggest issue that happens is you would think, at first approach these things is, okay, I got to pay sales tax, say, in Texas here. Okay, so what's the sales tax rate? We got a single rate, and that's what we pay. Boy, wouldn't that be nice. Just in the Metroplex, if you go from city to city, or if you're inside and outside of the dark area or whatever, there are all these different taxing jurisdictions that follow all these strange, county lines, city lines, school district lines, municipal utility district lines. So all of a sudden, determining tax rates becomes a real pain in the butt. So how do you do this? I guess the purist out there would say, okay, I've got lat long, and I should be able to go to some single database that tells me where that lat long would be taxed with the tax jurisdictions on it. Well, the reality is, while there is no governmental source that you can count on, and if you use that, you're protected in court from getting sued or something like that. There is no database of record or whatever. So, but you do have a number of companies that have put together database services that will help you find that information out. The first one I use, and I hope you can see my screen right here, this is Avalara. And I'll tell you, the real reason I use Avalara first, because we're going to talk about some others, is Avalara will let you get an account, and to tease you to use their services, they will let you use the one module that lets you put an address in, and it will tell you what the tax rates are for a given address. So in this example here, and I can't push the button to go because my account's been frozen due to non-payment, but that's the ironic thing. If I wasn't a paid account, it wouldn't have gotten frozen. But anyway, I put an address in here, city, state, and zip. You have to have it a zip. And then I do call the API, and the API just goes out and it literally grabs JSON. So we all see JSON comes back like this. And of course, we all in FileMaker hopefully know how to parse out JSON into a table like we have over here. And you can see that for this address where we happen to be right now, we have a Texas state tax at 6 1/4. We have a Texas special tax of 0.1, which if you go look at the tax code, you realize that's the dark one. And then there's a city tax of a penny, so, or 1%. So you add those up and you multiply it times the amount of the invoice, and that's what your tax rate is. Of course, we wish everything was always that simple, because guess what? Not everybody is, some people are tax exempt. If you sell to a city government or to a church or temple or something like that, they're not taxed. Other things are taxed, but not always. Thanks to legislatures, there's all kinds of exemptions. What do you tax? The old general rule used to be everything that was tangible was taxed, and everything that was a service was not taxed, and that went out the window a long time ago. That was when I was young, and it was the easy way to do things. Now all types of services are taxed. But you have to figure out whether items are taxable or not. And, for example, one of my companies is a graphic arts company. They create graphic art stuff, and of course that means they send things off to printers. They send all these gang printers, the jobs come back and they do things. Well, you send something to Texas and you send a print job off, if you're going to print on paper there, you pay the tax rate. Well, if you do that in Illinois, as long as the printing goes on paper, it's not taxable. But if it goes on a sign, it is taxable. So, so all these, and that's just one little example out there. And so it means the burden to your customer, remember, you're the FileMaker developer to help clients solve these problems, are how to reach out to these different APIs to find out, what things are taxable, what things aren't taxable, and basically how to know what to put on an invoice, but also not only what to put on an invoice, but what to report to the various taxing authorities. And of course, that's where Avalara and another one I'm talking about called TaxJar, really will help you out. So it's not only finding out what to tax, but then how to make those reports. Which, when you just had one state to deal with, if you were just in Texas and that was your only location, it wasn't that bad just dealing with, because in Texas it's the Texas Comptroller that you do. They've got a e-file website, and it wasn't that big a deal to go on and do things on. But, now that you're dealing with other states, it's much more of a burden to figure out that reporting. So in Avalara's case, they tease you that we'll give you the tax rates for this state, but that doesn't tell you if the item's taxable or not. For example, printing in Illinois isn't, it is in Texas. And it will not help you with the actual filing with the Texas Comptroller in the case of Texas here. And that's the service that they sell you. I will tell you, I'm always kind of, whenever I think my rates are expensive, some of these services are a lot more expensive than you think. So basically, by the time you throw all the other services in, it's hard to get out of Avalara on a given yearly rate of probably about 10 grand a year. Just if your clients, they hear the free thing, say, yeah, but by the time you really get all the juicy stuff, that's what you need to budget. So just FYI. Not that it's not valuable services, and these companies have to take care of these things, but, just they aren't free. It makes me sometimes wish I'd set up one of those. Boy, if I could have that AI going and just get checks in the mail, that would be beautiful. Right, James? Oh, checks in the mail are good. So there's another service out there. While I've done Avalara and have found them a very useful API within for FileMaker to use, TaxJar is one that tends to be a little more friendly to small to medium-sized businesses, so which might be a lot more of the typical FileMaker developer. Avalara really more aims towards the big companies, and they offer additional features like VAT taxes and in like Europe and in Canada and stuff. So they offer more, big enterprise level stuff. But likewise, I will also notice dealing with their API, is a little more burdensome. There are so many exceptions or things to try to understand than it is the tax jar one. If you wanted to start a little easier, you might look at tax jar, realize Avalara opens up more possibilities, it's more expensive and more complex. Then again, if you're selling development services, selling more complex stuff means I get more money. So, but anyway, I will say, Greg, are you online here, Mr. Price?
I am back. Yes, I was on mute.
I would want to inquire. Well, first of all, have you ever used TaxJar? I know you've done Avalara.
I have. Yeah.
Okay. So what is your feelings of Avalara and TaxJar, and have you tried any others? Because these are the only two I've tried.
Avalara is the only one that we've used so far. Our customers tend to like it because it allows them to get that information into their system while allowing somebody else to handle all the payments to all the various taxing authorities for them. It's just kind of a very simple, at least for them, it's a simple setup, right? I mean, they don't really know all the heartaches and headaches that we have to go through to get it all configured for them, but tends to work out best for them. So.
And this, the other side of things is this is very much like when we're dealing with another database somewhere. We're having to make sure the information we have in our FileMaker accounting database or production database is the same as what's in Avalara. So you're having to make sure you're syncing and comparing reports and stuff. So there are additional things.
Right.
The other thing I will note that I know Greg has done and I have done is my clients tend to have, thousands of products. But the reality is they can be grouped down in, for like my printing company has them grouped down into about 90 different products that we report to Avalara that have subsets that relate to a whole bunch of products within theirs. But that's all we needed for for example, obviously they've got all types of products for printing. Well, obviously if you just need printing on paper and that's all we needed for that, then we could just have one tax code for that we deal with on the API. So, and I believe Greg was doing that too. So you don't, and then of course that also gets into you're juggling another join table or jump table, whatever, between their products and what your products are. But, those are all the things that you have to do to make things happen. But I will tell you, it is nice for when you can get down to the reporting that it gives you a report and they will help you, make the reports to the states, and then you just pay them. And it's, the goal for my clients are, they just want to take care of this. They of course grumble about having to, the cost for it, but it's one of those things that now a lot of small businesses have kind of skipped by, realizing that, in the past they didn't have to do it, so they've been playing ignorant on it, and more the various taxing authorities are starting to send out letters saying, we know you exist in our state, it's about time, or you're doing business in our state, it's about time to start doing it. I will say a lot of the states are being a little gentle about it, but they are starting to be a little more proactive about reminding businesses that they need to start paying taxes. And I will say most of them are not having heartburn about looking for back taxes if you just start up legitimately doing it this year. Now, I assume at some point they're going to start, the tax authorities, tax man cometh, he'll eventually get you. So, and there are weird things about taxes, in states. I will say, for example, I, as a FileMaker developer, offer a service, FileMaker development service. Is that a taxable service? No, or I used to think it always wasn't. But guess what? If I sell you a FileMaker site license with that and the development services together, I have to tax all my consulting services. So, which is why
that's debatable.
I have it from a comptroller and a CPA, and I have argued with them on it. So
I've talked to the tax agents as well, and they've said otherwise.
Yes, well,
so it is a gray area, at least except that the tax code.
it may be a gray area, but if you phone the comptroller, they will tell you you have to do it. I've had a tax guy say we could challenge it and you might win in the hearing. And I have been to hearing. I have been to a hearing with the Texas comptroller and I have won. But we had to hire a lawyer, had to have a CPA, and somehow you win and yet you don't win. But
and that's why we have a separate company to take care of that. Now,
yes, that's the workaround. Note what Fred said is you have two companies, one that sells you the consulting services and one that sells you the software, and that way the software selling one doesn't charge the tax, but the consulting database development services does not, and that's
so. How much does this cost? This Avalara service? We're not using that because we have Texas and New York, and that's it.
Well, as I told you, expect about 10 grand per year. So, they lure you in with yes, you can put the address in and find out what the taxing authorities are for free. So that's the lure, really, yeah. And it's a good one. Because that's one thing that's really hard for a lot of people to figure out that. How do I know what the taxing authorities are for? So it's a big reel. TaxJar does not give you even that for free. So now TaxJar will let you go to their website and type in an address on their website and do it. I guess you could probably reverse engineer the website API call and whatever. We probably have Jeremy to help me do that, but I'm sure we could, or Michael Wallace, yeah. But anyway.
Do the states offer a portal to determine the tax? Without one of these services, what is
Texas does not.
It's not simple.
I'm not saying other states don't, but I'm saying Texas does not. The Texas comptroller does
How
not.
would you figure it out without paying the service?
You're always paying a service.
At some point, you got to find someone who went out and figured out this tax line jurisdiction of this utility district ends at this street here, and
You hire a smart child.
well, we don't all have smart childs like you.
Taylor, can you take?
You got to keep in mind that most people, this is handled by like POS systems in retail environments, things like that. So, or by enterprise level systems that are built with all of this built into it, whether or not they use a third party themselves or they have it coded completely in on their own. So really, the Avalara service is, I think, more along the lines of helping small to medium-sized businesses who don't want to have to spend the scratch to go ahead and do that themselves, or have to figure it out on their own, which is a whole other, as you might imagine, a big deal.
Well,
And it really is
grand
from-
a year's
and-
expensive. That'd be a whole lot more expensive to do.
Taylor,
Yeah.
I've got a comment for you.
It's a very difficult to comply with regulation, which benefits bigger businesses to the detriment of small businesses.
There you go.
Got it.
Yeah.
Can I give you a comment? Taylor?
Yeah.
This is an experience that I had years ago in Texas with a client who had a bad track record with the Texas controller. And the problem was that they had submitted reports that had gaps in between a numerical list of invoice numbers. And apparently that's a red flag with the tax authorities because it suggests to them that you're hiding a particular invoice, kind of like stealing. And ever once they had that on their record, they were audited every single year. So as a FileMaker developer, I had to make sure that the list of invoices that got submitted with their tax filing every year, or maybe it was even every month, I don't recall, that there were no gaps between invoice numbers. If there was an invoice that you would delete a record, rather than that, it would just be labeled void. So as long as the list of invoice numbers was perfectly consecutive with no numerical gaps, they didn't get into trouble.
Well, that's a general practice, best practice for CPAs that you don't do that because there's some ways to manipulate those numbers to commit fraud. And I have other clients that make sure that their invoice numbers are sequential for that reason. So, but yes, I've run into that with accountants. So we certainly don't want to be in Dutch with the government.
variations in taxation and tax authorities is so complex. And the vendors that we deal with, translate into clients that we work for, is such, I live in Plano, Texas. And on some sites, when I purchase something, I just give them my address and I'm good. On other sites, exact same, I haven't moved in 18 years, okay? Same address, they also require me to specify the county. That's because the city that I live in spans 3 counties and the tax rates, they want to make sure they're getting the right one.
Yep. Dallas is the 4 counties. So anyway, it's one
They
of
should
the
be able to pull that themselves though, shouldn't they?
They should.
They should.
Maybe they need a FileMaker developer to help them out.
Yeah, no kidding.
Come on, Greg. sell
Heather,
your
maybe you should be
services.
asking for a consulting fee to fill in that information for them.
That's right.
There we go. Okay, so one last warning. Avalara, if you want the free one, they have to get you in their system and they have to bless you or whatever it is, and it always takes at least a week to really get your account up and going. So if you want to do a free one, that you don't just sign up online and instantly get in. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt, but once you're in, you know, they don't expect money from you up front, but they will send you their advertisement stuff, hence part of the game. So, but that's all good. I like Avalara. I might try some more stuff with TaxJar stuff, but anyway, I recommend those. Lastly, I'll say if you want to come to my templates website, tms.us, I have the Avalara one there for at least getting the free tax rates part of it. It's not the rest of the Avalara stuff that I've done, but the at least getting the rates from an address. There's a template there you can download for free. It does require you to get an account with Avalara, so you'll have to spend a week getting that, but feel free to check that out. So we're at a point where we need to change presenters here. So we've got Jeremy, is it Bante or Bante?
I accept either.
He accepts either. Okay, well,
But it's Bante.
okay, well. Jeremy, we're glad to have you here. He's gonna tell us about modularity. Step on up.
Thank you.
As always, we'd like to remind you that you should be here. We want you here. We have food. Maybe you have a food suggestion. Let us know. We'll do something fun. Typically, we don't have beer, but notice I said typically. You never know what can happen in the future. Go ahead. Are you set up?
Yep.
You are ready. Jeremy is ready to go. So here we go.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
So, I'm Jeremy. I think we established that already. But I was reviewing some code recently, and I came across this modular find script, and I wanted to talk about it some. So I know the type's a little small for everyone to fit the whole thing on the screen, but to start with, it just enter find mode, of course. This outer loop here will set as many find requests as I want to set. This inner loop will set as many fields in each one of those requests as I want. And at the end,
Oh, that's not helpful for you. Sorry about that.
and here at the end, it will, perform find or extend or constrain the found set. On its face, it seems like a perfectly reasonable, highly modular script. It can handle any find I could want. It has no dependencies to worry about, no custom functions in here I have to copy and paste first. I can copy and paste it from one FileMaker into another, and it will work fine. I have a problem with this script. And it's not just that there's no error handling, and I wanted to explain why. I have to get a little abstract first, starting with the word abstraction. Now, programmers love to talk about how abstract code is or isn't and show off how powerful their abstractions are. Please stop. It's not just because it's annoying. The word abstraction means different things to different people in different contexts on different days of the week. It's confusing because it isn't clear which meaning we're talking about at any given moment, and it makes programming more difficult than it needs to be. Most of the time when we wind up using the word abstraction, we're really talking about one of two completely separate concepts: generalization and encapsulation. Now, humor me for a minute and consider a French press. A French press can be used to make coffee using many different sources of ground coffee beans. It generalizes over different grinds of coffee. Similarly, general code works in many different conditions. You can have one script or custom function that works on different applications in different contexts, different layouts, or just different parameters, whatever. That's what generalization is. Now consider a coffee machine. Given the inputs of ground coffee and water, a coffee machine can produce coffee via what may as well be magic, while we're blissfully unaware of how the coffee is being made. It encapsulates the process of making coffee. Similarly, encapsulated code can be used without thinking about how it works. You can use this to make chunks of logic that you can think about separately from each other, or you can figure out details and then hide them in wrappers, scripts, and custom functions and things while you're free to think about bigger picture concerns. That's encapsulation. Now consider a computer. Now, it feels powerful when we write highly general code. But when we write highly general code, we're not somehow imbuing the computer with a capability it didn't already have. Computers are already general purpose machines. Programming actually does the opposite. We're constraining the vast potential of what a computer could do down to the relatively few things we actually want it to do. Generalizing code is in essence about constraining the computer a little bit less. Now, for all their vast potential, computers are made of profoundly stupid components. It's mind-boggling how many machine instructions it takes to perform a simple operation like setting a field with a fixed value. And programming such an unwieldy contraption is the challenge, and the crux of the issue is all of us. Our human meat brains have severely limited working memory, not nearly enough to think about all those machine instructions all at once. And good computer programming is as much about human psychology as it is about computers. This is where encapsulation comes in. With encapsulation, our hundreds and thousands of machine instructions can get wrapped up into a single set field script step. I don't have to know what those machine instructions are or understand how they amount to setting a field. I just have to know how to use the script step. So generalization can be a nice-to-have labor savings or productivity multiplier, but encapsulation is what makes it possible to program modern applications at all. Programmers aspiring to modularity and satisfying the don't repeat yourself principle emphasize the value of generalization, but encapsulation is ultimately more important. And with that in mind, let's revisit the modular find script. Somebody probably thought this was a well-abstracted script. We now see this is a very general script. It works in any context on any fields to perform any find in any file. And since we want modular scripts to be portable across applications, this seems on its face to be desirable. But let's look at what it's really like to use this script. On the right, we're performing a simple find. On the left, we're performing the exact same find using our modular script. It looks like we've encapsulated 8 script steps down to 1. And this is an illusion created by the way that FileMaker formats script steps on screen. Each step is displayed on one line, regardless of how much configuration actually goes into it. Our find script requires a parameter, and to use the script, we're just as responsible for setting up that parameter as we are for setting all the conditions in the script steps on the right. On that side. Now, the parameter reveals what it's really like to use this script. Our modular's find script is actually every bit as complicated to use as just writing out the find for ourselves. We have to specify what fields to set, what match criteria to set to each field, which requests are for including or omitting records, and what kind of find we're performing, whether it's a fresh find or an extend or a constraint. If anything, the script parameter is more complicated than just scripting the find for ourselves. This script encapsulates nothing, and this offends my sensibilities as a professional developer. This is to say nothing of the extra work that the computer has to do. There's a complicated script parameter to encode and parse out. There's nested looping. There are checks for options that we may or may not be using in any particular find. And all of this would be perfectly acceptable if the script actually encapsulated something for us. But it doesn't. The script uses extra CPU cycles, and for that we get no psychological benefit or labor savings. It's just a waste. But all code should encapsulate something. So next time you're writing a script or custom function, think about, do you have to think about how your script works in order to use it? Do you have fewer parameters to specify than if you recreated the same functionality yourself? Is it less work to use your modular script than to copy and paste and edit an equivalent block of code? Does your script make some decision for you so that you can think about other things while you use it? And if not, it's perfectly okay to copy and paste and edit blocks of code if there's a certain pattern you want to repeat. Not everything benefits from being wrapped up in a reusable module. And that's the gist of what I wanted to talk about and how that awful script inspired me to rant and rave about it. So with that, are there any further comments along similar lines or questions or what have you?
How many of us are guilty of that? I think those.
So I'm not gonna call out names like my own, but there is one benefit that I find in using a particular generalized script that I have, which shall not be named, but that many of the people in the room know it well. When using, and I like the example that you gave of the find. And the benefit I'm going to describe may be more of a benefit for those of us who work in a multi-developer environment where you have multiple people in the same file. But I've seen systems in the past that because when you attach something to a button, you only have two options for performing something. One is perform one step, form a script. If you need to do more than one script step worth of anything, like set field, and commit, you have to have a script. And what I've seen that I find equally offensive for me are multitudes of scripts, which when you dive into them, basically all do exactly the same thing. Or you end up with actual duplicate scripts that literally have the same 2 or 3 steps in them, but a different developer realized that they needed those 3 steps. And so they created their own script that performs those 3 steps in that specific order. And if you look at them, what you're looking at is just a myriad of scripts that you automatically lean towards creating a new script of your own because you can't trust that the one you think you're picking is the right one anyway, because there's so many of them like that. And now if FileMaker let us attach more than 2, maybe if we could attach up to 3 steps in a row on a button, that we wouldn't have that problem. But I like using a more generalized script like that where I can string together those super, super simple steps. And I find an advantage because of the flip side.
And I would argue that that is perfectly fine. as long as that sequence of steps represents some decision that's getting encapsulated by the script, which usually is.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
like set field commit, the
Yeah.
always include the commit
Yeah.
is the encapsulated.
Exactly.
Right.
Taylor?
What if I'm getting paid by line?
Then definitely go.
Same reason I set all of my variables as UUID, the name of my variables at UUID. That way I'm irreplaceable, you know.
Yes.
So you were talking about psychology. I'm wondering, is this an issue, do you think with coders, primarily because it takes a bit more mental focus and energy to encapsulate versus generalize? Or is that more just a habit pattern that's become commonplace?
Well, one issue is that the word abstraction is so popular and it confuses the different meanings of it. And sometimes people get led into one interpretation of that instead of another. Another issue is that generalization is often lauded as super powerful and productivity saving because frankly, it is. It can be. And it's great to write a piece of code once and then have it get used a whole bunch of times. But it's just important to make sure that that code is actually doing, it's saving us something. It's like this find script, you could use it a bunch of times and that's neat and everything, but it doesn't actually save us any labor necessarily each time we use it in this particular example.
Yeah, a good analogy is that I'm thinking of it would help each layperson understand it. Maybe as Mark Joel is more from the tools. So in Steve's workshop, like there are tools that you can use for many different things, and that can be powerful because you know one tool and you can do all these things with it. But then there are many very specific different jobs or activities where it just makes so much more sense to drive back to AutoZone and buy this specific tool, because that one tool will save you 3 hours of labor because it is very purpose-built and specific. So the way I'm thinking that's more than encapsulation. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not.
That could be. I mean, it's perfectly fine to write a script or a custom function that only gets used in one place. For example, as long as it's encapsulating some piece of logic that I don't want to have to think about all the time.
Yeah.
Yes, Taylor?
In some ways, I was kind of thinking of when you encapsulation is in many ways of how I think of like a microservice, where I don't necessarily understand how it's working, but it really, when I'm pulling something in, code from something else from GitHub or something.
Right. Now, encapsulation, as I'm talking about here, means that you don't have to look at how something works to know how to use it. That doesn't mean necessarily that you don't have the option to. And I know that this is different from how the word encapsulation and abstraction sometimes get used, in particular in certain object-oriented languages that have different particular rules about how those things work. And sometimes the word encapsulation and abstraction get used to slightly different things in those contexts.
Where within the lexicon that you shared with us does modularity fit?
A modular script is something that would be super portable from one application to another. So a modular script is highly generalized in some way.
Can you give us some background on the script that you found and what it was hooked up to? Because I can only assume it was not used as a replacement for each and every find in the system. It must have been like somewhat narrow in terms of where and how it was used.
The person who was presenting this script in the code that I saw was actually using it exactly like that to perform every single found in the system.
Wow. Okay. Well, then that answers my question. And yes, I too have an issue with that. It kind of reminds me of something you had said about, if I recall correctly, Sugar SQL. Does that ring a bell to you?
No.
Okay, I'll try to find it back and see if I can reach out in other ways. But yeah, I think it was a wrapper around execute SQL, and you had said something a few years back. Anyway, but yeah, I get that if this script is used in the fashion you described, then yes, it gets more cumbersome using it than the benefits we'd be getting from yeah, from just writing it out and playing. So thank you.
Right, sure. And that sort of reminded me that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes the urge to make something more general and the urge to make something more encapsulated can be in tension with each other. Because a lot of times to make something more general, that means exposing an additional option that's no longer encapsulated anymore to do that. So sometimes they're in tension, but other times they're not necessarily, like when people make a whole new programming language. You know, they're encapsulating a whole set of machine instructions, but the result we get is still completely Turing complete. So we still have access to the full power of the machine operating it using that programming language, but still encapsulating the base machine instructions. Though hopefully no one's making a whole new programming language running on top of FileMaker. I haven't seen that work out.
I think the thing that I'm hearing from what you're talking about is that I know for me, and I've seen sometimes folks on my team, sometimes we confuse cleverness, and I think generalization generally requires some degree of cleverness. We confuse cleverness with efficiency or efficacy.
Right.
And it's kind of easy to get seduced down that path, and then you get to the end of the line and you finally make it all work. And isn't that neat? And then you try it the simple, stupid, old-fashioned way, and it's much faster. And I think that's, it's an example of what you're talking about. It's something I would call out is, hey, I'm going to use execute SQL everywhere versus scripted finds.
Right.
Scripted finds are probably almost always going to be faster, especially when we get to any level of complexity with FileMaker as our tool base, right? So that tension of cleverness versus efficiency and efficacy is something that we need to keep in mind.
Right.
I think another thing is how dynamically do you need to call a script or something like that? In other words, there's sometimes when, because of other situations, I save a lot of code by dynamically, I'm going to do this or whatever, and so that what I'm generating is I'm not hard coding like what you have there, all this JSON structure there, and because that's pointless. But if I'm dynamically doing it, maybe off of AI or something else, and it's generating it for me, then that's a good use case because AIs can generate JSON much easier than they can generate FileMaker code. So,
and it's fast enough,
right?
that the efficiency to use worth it.
Right.
Yeah. So totally.
So we have a script that we use. We have it in many different files, and we can confidently call it, and it happens to be a find script, but it performs a very specific find function. You define the layout and you provide it your IDs and it just finds them. But it always is finding using the exact same field, and it's our unique ID that's in every table. So it always only ever is searching for that field, and it knows which one specifically based on what layout it's being performed on. And it includes all of the error trapping and everything that you would want to see in there. All you're feeding it is those two pieces of data, where and your list of IDs. And we can confidently call it from anywhere and just feed it our list of IDs. If I'm hearing you correctly, then that would be an encapsulated
Yes.
script, because
The script is keeping track of which field is it searching for,
right,
how to identify which field that is in the
Right.
context,
right.
getting to that context, error handling.
And the user who calls it does not have to think about it. They just have to say where and what.
Right.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure
Good encapsulation.
that I am understanding you correctly.
But wait, there's more.
Is there? Okay.
This is the time, people, if you've been observing your FileMaker PUG user group email where there's an opportunity to bring your own problem. Now, the idea is, submit a problem and then we can discuss it. So at this time when we would have been discussing your unknown or maybe that exciting thing that you just figured out how to do that might have been clever and actually was good code and not a mess of encapsulated stuff that I just learned about from Jeremy. But this is the time when we'd like to do that. So we've talked about a couple of things here. I'm wondering if there's anybody here who's got subject matters while we're waiting for our food because our delivery driver had a flat tire.
I'll give you one, Fred.
Yeah, that was the call. That's why Fred was getting up and going out. If there were any topics of something that's going on that's been a problem.
I'll give you one. When you start using the new FileMaker admin console in 2024, you will observe that they have implemented the ability to sort and filter your schedules, which is one of a half dozen things that I was suggesting in a share voice in January of 2022. However, they did not do the one that got the most upvotes and was the most popular of the things I suggested. And that is when you want to select a script to be scheduled and you have to scroll through an endless list of scripts in a FileMaker database.
Oh, yeah.
That list should also be filtered. So I'm just going to encourage everybody to do what they can to make that a feature request for whatever is the next update.
I also noticed that I've only just looked at it, that the backup schedules is structured completely differently. That might have been what you're talking about, an ability to search for it, but I was lost when I saw that.
There was a live stream earlier this week where what you just mentioned was explained well, because there has been some movement of the backup schedules that you create. So now in the group of things in configuration that's called schedules, there's a variety of things that can be scheduled, and backups are one of them. So your list of schedules will be longer than it used to be, and that may be why they went ahead and made it something that you can filter and also sort. But I don't find that that's as much of a problem for everyday users like all of us as having to find the script that you're looking for in a list that could be hundreds and hundreds in length.
One thing I've learned to do with that is I have a specific user that is my SASE user, and I just give it permission for the scripts that I want it to be able to run. And then when I'm going on the server to pick the script, it only sees those scripts, so it's a lot faster to find it. So
yeah, I do something similar by grouping them at the very top of the list, anything that is intended to be run on the server, so I don't have to go scrolling endlessly. But we shouldn't have to each invent our own workarounds for a thing like that.
So you just limit it to specific scripts and then go and pick them when you want to add it.
Right, when I want to add a new script and make sure I include all the subscripts that it may call or whatever.
Right.
Fred, this is Greg. I just wanted to drop in, circling back to your question to Taylor about the cost of Avalara. I actually pinged one of my customers who has a pretty specific use case, but just to give you an idea. So I don't think that how many places in which you have Nexus really matters. And Nexus is basically where, like, there's states in which you are collecting tax, right? In other words, you do business in that state and therefore you're registered with them. And I think it's basically all about the number of transactions. And I believe that I think it's every API call is considered one third of a transaction, which is good because sometimes you have to do more than one call in order to complete a transaction. But basically, I think he has 2,000 transactions a year, or that's the tier he's on. I think your tier gets moved up automatically, and he paid just under $2,000 for the year. So it's not really $10,000 is kind of high, but it really depends upon the level of services that you get from them. And I know that there are some services that he does not pay for, but he definitely has them pay his taxes at the end of the year, or at the end of the month, I think is what it is, every month.
So they file the with
They
the
file
authority.
all
They
that
file.
for you, correct?
Right.
Yes.
They follow sales tax.
Yep. They collect it. So basically, you just get a bill for whatever sales tax you owe, plus, I mean, you pay your annual fee, or I would assume most people would pay annually for this, like he does.
How they get you is for example, if you want exemption certificates for people so that you can resell and outdo it, document it in the system, for the incredible price of only 500 records and only, one exemption for each one of them. Now, they do keep track of the dates and help do all the reminders, everything on it, but for only 500 records, they charge you $2,600 a year. That's an optional service, but if you want to be able to keep track of who's exempted out of which invoice, then you got to do that, and that's where they nickel and dime you.
You're paying for their encapsulation.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so FileMaker 2024 has come out, and you've seen it and you've been curious about it. The icon is no longer blue, it's green. Why did they do that? We don't know. But you may find something that's interesting with FileMaker 2024. Take note of that and be aware of your FMPUG email that's going to be coming out, because we have some ideas to discuss some of that next time. And Taylor, if you want to come up and close everything out, that would be great. So new things in server. I have no idea how the AI works. I don't know what AI is, but it's just one of those things. We'll all learn.
Good. Okay, thank you for being here. We'll conclude our meeting here. We'll be meeting next month, the day after the holiday, so join us if you can. I'm going to be joining remotely next month because I'll be in Montana, where we'll be suffering with like 80-degree weather and thinking that's warm. And so now that obviously Texas is preheating and getting ready for the big stuff to come through. So, but last comment about this is the last day to get pause on error in at the reduced rate and probably a hotel room. So if you're thinking about coming, certainly that's next October is where it is in northeast Georgia.
What are the dates?
Yeah, I forget.
October.
Like Georgia.
So anyway, but yeah, if you haven't ever been, it is a small version of the big developers course at a conference. And it tends to be a lot smaller. They're probably maybe, 100, 150 people or something. So, but it also is a lot less structured, and I kind of like that.
More relaxed. It's like a little mini vacation.
Certainly more so. Anyway.
A lot of advantages.
It definitely encourages group participation.
Yes. Instead of just being in a conference room listening, you're actually participating a whole bunch more, and so that's one of the nice things.
It's a conversation.
Yeah, and it also tends to have more, advanced people there too. So anyway. But
October 7th.
anyway, anybody hear any rumors on the next developers conference? Engage, whatever. Who knows?
$10, it's in the same place.
Actually, I've heard some rumors they're already working on it being there. Yep. So anyway.
Oh yeah.
Get used to the price was right apparently. So, but okay. Well, we will see you all next month, and thanks for being here. Take care, everybody.
Everybody wave bye.